What's up, everybody? It's the Benchwarmers, and we are back with another video. Today, we're going to be doing our mid-season power rankings for the 2021-22 NFL season. So a lot of really interesting things have happened throughout the season. It's the first year where crowds are back since the pandemic year last year. However, there's going to be a lot of movement from our earlier preseason power rankings, which we had. That is going to be linked in the description below. So you can check that out to see our analysis before the season versus how it is right now. So without further ado, let's get to our number 32 team in the NFL.
All right, unfortunately, the worst team in the league is the Detroit Lions. We originally had them projected as the second worst, so not really too big of a difference there. They're just bad. They're the only team without a win. In fact, every team besides them has at least 2 wins, so they're really behind there.
31st, we have the Houston Texans, who are currently 2-8. Not last year, but at the beginning of this season, we projected them to be 32nd, so it's not really much of a difference. But one notable thing is that Tyrod Taylor's back, so they may start winning more, but overall, they're just not a good team.
Next, as our third worst team, projected fourth worst team before, we have the Jets. The Jets have long been the laughingstock of the NFL. They did have a couple game wonder with Mike White before he was shut down and ultimately benched because of his terrible performance versus the Bills. I think they're starting Joe Flacco right now, who hasn't been good since like 2016. So that sort of sums up where the Jets are. Their defense is terrible. Their offense might be worse, and they are obviously the Jets.
And next up, we have the Jags. Once again, this is a team we originally had projected pretty badly at 30th. Trevor Lawrence really just hasn't been as good as many expected him to be. Not saying he's a bust or anything, because he still has a ton of time to improve, but this has just not been their year.
At 28th, we have the Chicago Bears, and at the beginning of the season, we projected them to be 21st. So they're doing much worse than we expected. And there are many things. So first of all, Justin Fields is injured. Even when he played, he was really bad. Khalil Mack is out for the rest of the season. And just overall, the team is just really bad. They're not passing to Allen Robinson. No one's stepping up on both sides of the game. And they're just not going to play well this year.
Next, at the number 27 spot, 2 spots lower than their preseason rank, we have the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons, they just are the Falcons. They choke games away. Any win they have is extremely close for no reason, even though they have a lot of offensive talent. Kyle Pitts has come into his own a little bit over the past few weeks, but Matt Ryan has taken a step back. Cordero Patterson has been a pleasant surprise, but the defense is terrible as always, and they are 4-6 on the year.
Next up at number 26, moving down from number 22, we have the New York Giants, who are currently 3-7. This is something we kind of expected. We knew this would either be boom or bust, basically completely depending on whether Daniel Jones takes a step up, and he just hasn't. So the offense is still just as terrible as it was last year, and the defense has actually regressed a bit. So that's why they're pretty low on our list.
25th, we have the Miami Dolphins, and this is probably one of our biggest drops this whole video, because at the beginning we project them to be 12th, and that's actually in playoffs, but right now they're 4-7, and there are many reasons. First of all, their quarterback situation is worse than we expected because Tua was injured, and even when he played, he wasn't that good. And then also defensively, only recently has their defense started to step up, and at the beginning they were really bad, and they weren't the gridiron defense that we expected.
At the 24th spot, we have the team which has fallen the farthest this NFL season. The NFC West normal playoff lock, the Seattle Seahawks. They are 3-7 on the year, and this is for a variety of reasons. Number one, Russell Wilson got injured relatively early into the season, and also the emergence of division rivals such as the Arizona Cardinals has also caused them significant losses. Geno Smith was not that great at the quarterback position, and even as Russell Wilson has come back from his injury, his torn finger, in the past 2 weeks, he has not looked good. He has around 50% completion percentage in both games, albeit they are against 2 very good defenses in the Packers and Cardinals. But the Seattle Seahawks need to win out in order to even have a chance of sniffing the playoffs.
Next up at number 23, we have the Washington football team, who we originally had at number 16. So that's a pretty sizable drop for them as well. Their offense has been bad, but that's honestly what we expected. Like, it's the football team. What we thought would happen is that a good defense and a bad offense would average out to be somewhere in the middle. But honestly, the defense has actually been not very good as well. So that's why they've been really struggling so far. But they are on a 2-game win streak with some impressive performances, so they might be on the up and up.
At 22nd, we have the Denver Broncos, and at the beginning, we project them to be 26th. So they've actually gone up 4 spots. The Broncos are a really average team. Their offense is really average. Teddy Bridgewater is an average quarterback. Their run game's at pretty average. Their receivers are pretty good. But I think a lot of the Broncos' wins are from teams that aren't too good, and their only very good win was against the Cowboys. So I think the Broncos are a pretty mid team right now, and as of right now, they're not going to make the playoffs.
With their next spot at 5-5 record, but the 21st team we have overall, up 3 spots from their preseason rank, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders are probably the team which have undergone the most turmoil this season, with the firing of Coach John Gruden over racist and sexist emails from a decade ago, and also the cutting of 2 key players on their teams who were first-round draft picks in Henry Ruggs and Damon Arnett. However, their team is still quarterbacked by a very good quarterback, in my opinion. I think still on the edge of that like top 10 to top 15 range in Derek Carr. And also they have some decent pieces on the defensive end. They started off the season pretty hot, but have cooled off in the last 3 to 4 weeks, and doesn't seem to be going in the right direction. This is sort of how the Raiders always are every season, so I'm honestly not surprised.
Next up, we have the Saints at number 20, and we actually had them projected number 20 at the beginning of the season, but to say that their season so far has been expected would definitely be wrong. A few weeks ago, we probably would have had the Saints much higher, like inside the top half, because Jameis Winston actually ended up impressing us. We thought he would have no chance of filling Drew Brees' shoes, but he was actually all right. But now that he's out for the season, it's really looking bad for the Saints. Trevor Siemian has not impressed at all. So there's definitely not really a significant chance that the Saints make the playoffs at this point.
At 19th, we have the Carolina Panthers, who started off the season 3-0, but then went on a big losing streak and are currently 5-6. There are multiple reasons, one of them being their quarterback situation. Sam Darnold is injured, so they had to originally play PJ Walker, who was okay. And then they just brought in Cam Newton, who had a really good game, but I'm really not sold on him. I don't think he can keep up his performances. And also their defense has so much talent. They have really good young guys like J.C. Horn, Derek Brown. They even got C.J. Henderson too. But their defense, given the talent, has really been underperforming. So as of right now, they're another mid to average team.
At number 18, we have a high riser. They were originally predicted for our side to be the 5th worst team in the NFL. Now, at number 18, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. And I like this team a lot. I like Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch, although he may not be the most talented passer. I like the way this team competes and the way they're able to beat some good teams. They're able to beat teams like I think they beat the Broncos, if I'm not wrong, and they also just beat the Saints. So beating 2 quality opponents who were really good to start off the season, I think is a good way for Jalen Hurts and the Eagles to start racking up wins. And I think that they currently have an outside shot to make the playoffs, which is all you can really ask for with a quarterback like Jalen Hurts and a team devoid of talent like the Eagles. However, also their defense has been pretty mediocre to even above average in some games. And also the emergence of rookie Devontae Smith at wide receiver has been pretty solid.
Next up on our list, we have the Steelers, who are currently 5-4-1. We have them now ranked 17th, whereas they started at 14th. So really not a huge change. Big Ben is obviously, in his twilight years at this point, so he's not performing at the level he used to. So really, the offense isn't that great, except for Najee. Najee has definitely been a bright spot for them. But on defense, it's okay, but it's definitely not the same elite Steelers defense we're used to in recent years. So the Steelers are basically an average team at this point.
Next at 16, we have the San Francisco 49ers, who we originally projected to be 10th, so they've gone down 6 spots. I think there are many reasons for this. First of all, Trey Lance hasn't really been playing, so we're still sticking with Jimmy Garoppolo. Also, at the beginning of the year, Kyle Shanahan was really being a questionable coach because he wasn't letting Brandon Ayuk play because he didn't feel like Brandon Ayuk was ready, which was kind of weird. And he's just been doing these very sketchy things. I think he's still a great coach, but there are definitely things that he should be more open about. And also, I think more recently, their defense has been better and they haven't been turning over the ball as much, which is why they were able to beat the Rams and Jaguars so well. And also the 49ers have a pretty easy schedule the rest of the season. So I think that they're a sleeper to make the playoffs. They have a decent shot at it right now. And I personally think that they can do it. But as of right now, they're barely missing the playoffs.
Speaking of teams barely missing out, that brings us to our next team. At number 15, rising 4 spots from our preseason ranking, we have the Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts are actually looking pretty good off late, especially with a dominating win over the Buffalo Bills most recently. We are not going to overreact to that. Jonathan Taylor definitely looks like he's going to be a Pro Bowler. He's might be one of the top running backs in the entire league, considering Derrick Henry is injured. We'll get to that later. But this Colts team, I like this team a lot. Carson Wentz, pretty solid, especially considering last year. He's been much better behind a competent offensive line that the Colts have. Also, Jonathan Taylor, as we said, really good. Even their wide receiving core, which last year was kind of a mess, has its new wide receiver one. Yep, our fellow YouTube brethren, Michael Pittman Jr. Is the clear wide receiver one on the team, and he has been balling out. Besides last week, where obviously Jonathan Taylor had 5 touchdowns, he's been consistently raking in about 8 to 10 targets a game and has been dominant, getting some amazing catches. And I think there's almost every single week he was getting a catch, even when there was a DPI on him. It just shows you how versatile his game is and his skill, which he has. Also, the defense, like always, is extremely good, especially against the run with players such as DeForest Buckner. And even in pass coverage, it's really good. So it's overall a very solid team who is on the up and up, especially after a terrible start to the season.
Next up at number 14, we have the Vikings moving up 4 spots from their original ranking at 18. That's because the offense we all expect it to be good because they have Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen. It's a solid unit. But we really thought the defense would kind of be pretty bad, which would make them overall an average team. But the defense has been about average. So if you combine that with a good offense, it's a pretty decent team. And the reason we have them ranked over all of the other 5-win teams and even a 6-win team in the Colts is that even when they lose, every single game they lose is very competitive. Like they only lost to the Cardinals, one of the best teams in the league, by 1 point. They lost to the Cowboys by 1 score, the Ravens by 1 score. So this is a team that can always compete at a high level, but they just have a bit of an issue with closing out games. But it's a very talented team, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make the playoffs at this point.
13th, we have the Cleveland Browns, who actually dropped 6 spots from our preseason rankings. They're definitely underwhelming right now. They have so much talent on both offense and defense. I think their defense has been kind of inconsistent. For most of the games, they've been fine, but then they let the Patriots completely blow them out and drop 45 points on them. And also, their D-line hasn't been playing as well as we expected them to. Same with their secondary, honestly. And then if you look at offense, Baker Mayfield hasn't been too good. And OBJ, he left the team. And his dad even posted a video on Twitter with a bunch of plays where Baker Mayfield missed him. I think that goes to show that even though OBJ may have had his struggles, Baker Mayfield has not been a great quarterback. So I think the Browns, they have some rough patch. They're rough on some ends, but I think overall they're a solid team. And if they can keep playing like they're playing right now, they should be able to sneak in as a 6 or 7 seed in the playoffs.
Now we move on to probably the biggest riser that we have. At number 12, we have the 6-4 Bengals. Trust me, if you had told anyone in the NFL world that the Bengals would be better than the Browns at this point in the season, you would have been laughed at. You would have probably been kicked out, maybe even slapped a little. But that's been the case. The Bengals are good. they have a really competent roster with players such as Joe Burrow lighting it up and having Joe Mixon back at it. And even the offensive line isn't as bad as they have been in previous years. You have an amazing wide receiver, a trio of Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, who's been explosive, and T. Higgins. And their defense is actually sometimes decent. Oh, obviously, they are a young team, which means that they will have some unexpected losses. But being 6-4 in a very competitive division and also in a very competitive conference is nothing to laugh at. They are a good team, and I expect this team to be much higher in years to come.
Next up at number 11, we have another 6-4 team, the LA Chargers. We originally had at 13, so a small increase, but not a major one. The Chargers have really been about where we expected in terms of offense. Justin Herbert is very talented. He's been playing pretty well, and so is Eckler and Keenan Allen. And even Mike Williams has been pretty good at times, at least during the first half of the season. So hopefully he can return to that earlier form. And the defense is pretty good as well. But really just the main problem with them, which is kind of going to become a recurring theme throughout this top half, is that there is inconsistency. Like they've gotten blown out in a few games. And that's just not something that can be happening to a top 10 team. So that's why we have them just a little bit outside of the top 10.
At 10th, we have the Buffalo Bills, who are currently 6-4, which is 7 less than our preseason rankings. And this may seem like a huge drop. And I think what's happening to the Chiefs is what happened to the Bills. I think the Bills are a very talented team. When they win games, they usually blow out their opponents and score 30 more points than their opponents, which is a really special thing. And then when they lose, it's usually these really close games by just one score, with the exception of last week where they got absolutely blown out by the Colts and Jonathan Taylor. So I think right now they're just going through a rough patch, but they have the right pieces on their team. They have a good coaching staff too. I think if they can just get back on track over these next few weeks and get out of this rough patch, I think they're going to be a playoff team. And right now we have to have them a bit lower, and we may be a little bit paranoid, but I think in the coming weeks, they're definitely going to rise through our rankings and hopefully do better than they are right now.
At number 9, oh boy, Foxborough, the bad boys, they're back. At number 9, we have the New England Patriots, up 8 spots from number 17 in our preseason rankings. And note, at that time, we thought that Cam Newton would be the starting quarterback, but Mac Jones immediately was thrust into the spotlight after they cut Cam. And man, he has been serviceable as a quarterback. He has been able to make these short Tom Brady type of offense, those short cuts, those slants, even a couple of long bombs once in a while show you that he is that accurate quarterback who they drafted out of Alabama in the mid-first round. And the team surrounding them, the defense has been extremely good, especially the past few weeks, with dominating wins over competent teams such as the Browns, who they dominated 45-7, the Jets, who they beat 54-13, and the Chargers, who they were able to squeak out a win against. And this team did not look too good early on. I think they might have been 1-3 or 2-4 early on, but they were able to climb out of the gutter and are on an amazing win streak. They are a team headed in the right direction, an amazing defense and a pretty decent offense with a variety of free agent additions under the tutelage of Bill Belichick himself. They're back.
And now at number 8, we have the Cowboys, who are 7-3. We originally had them projected at 15. So this is a major increase for them. What we thought at the beginning is, good offense, bad defense. This is a middle of the pack team. But this offense isn't just good. It's really, really good. Dak Prescott was playing very well. CeeDee Lamb took a step up. Cooper's, always been elite. And then in the running game, Zeke has been good as always, but even Tony Pollard has been taking a step up. And then on defense, it's not that bad either. One player in particular who's impressed a lot of people is Trevon Diggs, who's currently on pace to tie or even beat the interceptions in a season record. So, but the thing is that they've just had a few rough games recently. So we actually would have had them ranked around in the top 5 a few weeks ago. But ever since a very minor injury, which we really didn't think would have a big impact, Dak has not been the same player he was at the beginning of the season, which is especially odd considering after a huge injury, he managed to bounce back and still be amazing. So we're not really sure why this minor injury is having such a big effect, but he needs to get back on his game for the Cowboys to be a Super Bowl contender.
At 7th, we have the Ravens, and they're 3 lower than we had them in the preseason. The Ravens are currently 7-3, which puts them in a very good spot as division leaders, and they're going to have a good seed in the playoffs. But that being said, they've gone through many injuries. So at the beginning of the year, they had a whole bunch of running backs getting injured. But luckily, they still have Lamar, who's he's not a running back, but he runs the ball a lot. And also, I think one other thing that the Ravens have really improved on this season is passing. So even though their run game has definitely taken a hit because they've had many injuries, their passing has gotten much better, and Lamar's really learned to become a better passer and become a more versatile player. And even when Lamar was injured, players like Huntley stepped up, and they're able to barely get a win over the Bears. So I think the Ravens have really shown that even when they've faced many injuries, they can still be a talented team. So when all their players are healthy, I think they're a really good team. And right now they're in a great spot to make the playoffs.
Next, at number 6, up 3 spots from their preseason ranking, we have the current AFC 1 seed, the Tennessee Titans. Now, they might be one of the most confusing teams in the NFL for a variety of reasons. 2 of their losses are against teams which we have ranked in the bottom 3, the Texans and the Jets. So, however, these 2 losses in between them were wins against the Bills, the Chiefs, the Colts, the Rams, and the Saints, all very good teams with very good defenses. However, Derrick Henry, their star running back, who was on pace probably for another 1,900 to 2,000 yard season, did get a major injury, which likely will keep him out for the rest of the regular season. However, people are hopeful that he will be able to return for the playoffs, but they are cautiously optimistic about that, that there's a very realistic chance that he will not play at all this season. However, in his absence, Ryan Tannehill has been decent. He hasn't been amazing, especially in that game against the Texans, but in those other games, he's been pretty good. Other running backs, such as Jerry McNichols, have picked up the pace, and their wide receiver duo of A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, when he's healthy, are still doing quite decently. On the defensive end, the defense has been a lot better than they were last year, especially. Their defense has made some crucial stops, especially. They aren't way too talented of a core, but they can win when they need to. They can make those goal line stops, and hopefully that'll be able to translate for them in the playoffs. However, they are the 1 seed currently, which does play a bit into their current ranking at number 6 overall.
Next up on our list, inside the top 5 now, we have the LA Rams, who we originally had at number 6. And for a lot of teams, being ranked at number 5 would be a huge success. But for the Rams, that might not actually be the case because they really started off the season so well. We actually would have had them ranked number 1 a few weeks ago because Stafford was playing like an MVP. It was so nice to see him finally out of that trash can of a franchise that is the Detroit Lions and actually be on a good team. And Cooper Kupp might actually be the second coming of Jesus. Like, he was so good throughout the whole first half of the season. And just in general, the Rams are playing so well, and they also made some big signings like OBJ and Von Miller. So we thought this team would be the number 1 team in the league, but they've had a rough few weeks. Stafford has regressed a bit, and that does have a lot to do with the injury of Robert Woods, which is super unfortunate. So hopefully that doesn't have a significant long-term effects, and players like Van Jefferson and OBJ can step up in Robert Woods' place, so that the Rams can become an elite offense again.
At 4th, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, and at the beginning of the season, we projected them to be 1st. So this is a 3-spot drop. I think at the beginning of the year, the Kansas City Chiefs had many problems. Patrick Mahomes was throwing so many interceptions. I think in the month of September, he had a perfect passer rating or some really insane stats. But then that month, I think he threw an interception in every single game that month. So I think that really goes to show that the Chiefs may have been kind of overplaying themselves the past few years, and now they've sort of come back down to earth. But that being said, I think they're still a really good team on both offense and defense, and that really goes to show why they've had a 4-game winning streak against not just Mickey Mouse teams, but against teams like the Packers, the Raiders, and Cowboys, who are actually pretty good and that are also potential playoff teams. So I think at the beginning of the year, the defense had many struggles and they were getting blown out by bad teams but now their defense is playing much better. I think their offense is actually still struggling a little bit. Patrick Mahomes, he's been a little bit inaccurate and he's throwing a lot of interceptions, but I think over time he's going to get better at that. And I think the Chiefs are definitely going to be at least a 10-win team by the end of the year. And they're going to be a good playoff contender too, because even though they may not get a good seed, they have a lot of playoff experience and they very recently won a Super Bowl and made the Super Bowl. So I think that's going to be a huge factor in their success later on.
Yeah, and they didn't win 2 Super Bowls in a row because of this team we have at number 3. Yes, we're talking about the Tom Brady-led Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are currently 7-3 overall. Now, they did have a couple of questionable losses, such as one to the Washington football team. However, they're still the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're still relatively healthy. Rob Gronkowski just became healthy again, and Antonio Brown should be healthy in a couple of weeks. So they do have an amazing offense. They have a really good O-line, and they have maybe a slightly questionable running back core with Fournette, who's sort of more of a receiving back, and also other receivers such as Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and of course, Gronk and AD. And their defense, which has not been as good as they were last year, they have sort of stepped it up at times too, especially with the return of some secondary pieces, which they lost early into the season. However, I think that pass rush is still dominant as always, and that defense communication. I think all 22 starters are back. I think only one is injured right now. So I think they will get themselves into playing shape and be ready for another possible Super Bowl run. But right now we have them at number 3.
And the penultimate team on our list at number 2 is the Green Bay Packers, who we originally had projected at being number 5. They're currently 8-3, which is definitely a very solid record. They actually account for one of the Cardinals' losses. If you've been paying attention, you might know where the Cardinals are ranked at this point. But they did just lose a close game to the Vikings. I don't think that's a major concern because the Vikings are a very, very talented team, especially offensively. So losing to the Vikings isn't really a huge issue. The Packers are still a very talented team. And also you do have to remember that in that Vikings game, Aaron Jones was injured, so that may have had a factor. But with Aaron Jones back, this team, both especially offensively, is very amazing. And on defense, it's good enough that the offense can carry it to success.
And finally, at number 1, the moment you've all been waiting for, we have the Arizona Cardinals, who are currently 9-2 and have the best record in the entire NFL. And this is 10 spots higher than we predicted, so they're definitely proving the haters wrong. They started the season 7-0, which is one of the best starts in any NFL season in NFL history. And then they ended up losing to the Packers on a very heated Sunday night football game, I believe, or it was like a special football evening, but it was a very close game and they lost. Then later on, Kyler Murray got injured, so then Colt McCoy came in, and that's a name that we haven't really heard in years since he played on the football team. And even with Colt McCoy, they were 2-1, which is not that bad. They did get blown out against PJ Walker and the Panthers. I think that, PJ Walker played in the XFL. But other than that, they've been really solid and they've been a really great team. Their defense is definitely top 5. I think Chandler Jones had 5 sacks against the Tennessee Titans in week 1. That really goes to show how great their defense is. We've also had many other people step up. They have a defensive end whose name I can't remember, but he has 9 sacks and he's really stepped up. Also, their offense has been really good. They have a really good receiving core with D-Hop, Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore too. He's really stepped up. And at tight end, they've acquired Zach Ertz, who's a huge upgrade over the guy they had previously. Kyler Murray's a great quarterback. Even their O-line is really good too. So overall, the Cardinals are a really great team. And right now, it's looking like they may come away with the Super Bowl.
Well, that wraps it up for our mid-season power rankings. Definitely a few huge shifts when comparing it to our preseason rankings. So let us know which ones you agree with and which ones you don't, and also who you think who's your favorite to win the Super Bowl at this point. Obviously, for us, it's the Cardinals, but this is the Benchwarmers, and we're signing out. See ya.